And hi, Sophia. I'm so happy to be here with you and to be able to get to talk with you.
Yes, super, super happy to see you again, and thank you, Bryce and Gabby, for the introduction.
Wonderful. Well, I thought we could start. Today we're going to be talking about folklore and futurism and what that means. And I thought we could start by unpacking what that idea is. And I'd love to hear your perspective of what it looks like today, and especially in the Latinx music world, what you've been seeing.
Yes, so well, I guess this term folklore and futurism was actually a description that a journalist made of my music, and I was like, oh, how perfect! This could kind of, put together quite a lot of other artists that I admire or other people um, that, like me, have been exploring connections between roots music from, well, in my case, Latin America, South America in particular, with all kinds of expressions that are more contemporary, uh, jazz, electronic music, other more contemporary forms of pop music, R&B, hip hop. And I found, I mean, right this second, I found there are so many incredible artists that are exploring this in various ways. And I find it very interesting how, even though we could all be put under some kind of umbrella, everybody has a very, very distinct sound and a very distinct personality and a very distinct kind of like new little genres that they are developing. And a lot of them are women. So, yes.
That was really exciting when we first started talking about this, just the level of diversity and just the different interpretations that can fall under this one
Yes.
umbrella. I'm wondering for you, kind of what that's looked like. How aware were you when you started making music that you really wanted to combine these two things? Like, from the sound of it, it was almost unconscious. It didn't dawn until you heard that
Yes. I don't think it was, I mean, I definitely know it wasn't a conscious move. I had many lives as a musician. I started in music when I was 4 years old, and I started working professionally as a singer in the children's choir of the Opera House in Buenos Aires. So this was classical music, and I continued studying classical music in the conservatory and in many different choirs and vocal groups and organizations. But I, at the same time, I was listening to a lot of other kinds of music back home, a lot of folk music, tango, and also rock and also punk. Especially during high school, I, kind of stopped the whole classical music training and was playing drums in a punk group and in the basement of my house in Buenos Aires, and making my neighbors very unhappy.
I'm curious if you can talk more about those influences, especially the kind of the folk ones, and how you found them coming up sort of later in your music. What did you? It sounds like there were a lot of different influences when you were growing up, but what are some
Yes,
of those
I think,
ones?
yes, two massive ones were Violeta Parra
Mm,
and Mercedes Sosa. And it's interesting because I actually discovered Violeta Parra through the voice of Mercedes Sosa.
mm,
Mercedes was an artist that was played at home all the time. I would sing all her songs, and she wasn't a composer, but she was still to today probably one of the most incredible voices that Latin America ever had. And
yeah.
she had a record where she sang all songs by Violeta Parra
Mm,
that for me was very, very special. And I actually, because of that album and because of my particular love to this music and to Violeta Parra, I put together a tribute record a few years ago when it was her 100th anniversary to celebrate her and to celebrate this music. She was considered the mother of Latin American folk music, but it's interesting because she was also very experimental in the
yeah.
way she approached folkloric music. She would bring different kinds of instruments that were not part of, let's say, traditions of Chile, she would make something more Pan-American in a way by bringing cuatros, Venezuelan cuatros, or different percussion instruments from other parts of South America and Cuba and into the music. She would also listen to contemporary European music, and you could tell that influence um, in other works that she's done, like El Gavilán, for instance. So I think sometimes we think of this folk artist as I don't know, there is something the word pure comes to mind, but
Mhm.
always everything was a big mix. Always everything was transitioning from something to something else. There were always movements of people that would come and go and bring back and forth music and instruments and sounds and rhythms. So this idea of a more flexible folklore is something that's very appealing to me.
Mm.
And without thinking about it, I think I made it a bit of a mission to uh, to express it fully, and not to think of folk music as something stagnant, as something fixed.
Yeah. What do you think the interest has been in kind of taking those folk influences, as flexible as they are, and then kind of combining them with maybe production that sometimes is more forward thinking, or that we think of, as maybe more modern or contemporary? Why have these two kind of I love what you said about it's two flexible worlds, but in a lot of ways they've always been in conversation. But I'm curious why you think that conversation has been going on, where people are pulling kind of from the different decades.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, well, in my case, I'm from Argentina, but I'm from a big city. And big cities usually also have more of a cosmopolitan experience. And also, again, the fact that I listen to so many other kinds of music and electronic music also growing up, this is part of who I am, and this uh, is going to influence the way that I will present anything that has to do with folk. And I think this is the experience of um, many other people. And in the 2000s in particular, something very special happened in in South America, for instance, where um, many artists, many musicians were, they were trying to break free from the labels of, okay, no, you play rock, so you stay there. You play tango music, you stay right there. You play folk music from a particular region. Um, People started to be more flexible, experimenting, crossovers, and they started to also, as city people, looking into, wow, there is this richness, this beautiful music that we are not aware of. We didn't grow up listening to that, and let's go and check it out. And in Colombia, in particular, I saw it very much with friends of mine that are my age, that are my generation, that literally went to see this very last generations, this older generation of musicians that were playing instruments that were kind of, forgotten in the mainstream music, gaitas, all different kinds of percussion, and going there and learning with them, but then bringing it back to the city and bringing it back to their uh, bands, and of course, naturally mixing it with sounds that were appealing to them. I think the whole new production of any music that we might be doing today has the benefit of, for instance, creating sounds that were not available to us before. That's what I think is fascinating about the possibility of not everything that's created with a computer needs to sound generic or
Right.
robotic or without a soul, right? I mean, it's kind of like, oh well, it was made in a computer. It's quantized and it's very squarey, and it sounds
Binary, beep, beep, beep.
less human. So there are ways to do that I mean, there are better ways to put these two things together that to me has the best of the two worlds, that has the soul, the very deep spirit of folk music that has this connection to the earth, the region, the tradition, something that we all somehow sang together or knew together or participated in. And that's the beauty of folk music. and incredible rhythms also that are a bit lost in mainstream music right now. Unfortunately, a lot of these, I mean, in South America, there is a richness, a vast richness of rhythms that are not represented in most music that we listen to today. It's mainly Latin music right now is mainly about reggaeton and cumbia, right? But there are so many incredible rhythms that we could dance to as well, or not, and that are fascinating to me, that can be also incorporated into these new productions and bringing kind of the best of the two worlds.
I think one project where you did that so beautifully is on Umbral,
Yeah.
which I think is just like an incredible just a collection of sounds and a way of translating so many things at once. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that project and what it unlocked for you.
Yes. So Umbral, is my last album, is my latest release, and it it was a very long process actually, because for me it was a change in terms of my way of listening to music, seeing music, producing music, writing music all together. Many years ago, I started experimenting with new technologies, like effect processors for my voice and loop machines. For those that are listening, they're like, I have no idea what she's talking about. A looper is a machine that would allow you to record a little fragment of music and then create layer upon layer upon layer on top of that first one, and creates something that to me is very, very appealing. This multitude of voices, or a multitude of sounds that you can produce on your own. I'm a composer, and but my main my although I play piano and charango and some other instruments, my main instrument and the one that I feel most comfortable with is my voice. So for me, this was transformative because I could translate an idea, a musical idea, very quickly from my vocals with effect processors and different things that I could apply to it, and create all kinds of sounds that were not only just, okay, a pure voice, but perhaps something that would be useful for the foundation of a rhythm and harmonies and all kinds of things that a melodic instrument like a voice couldn't do. And this changed my way of writing and arranging music. And for Umbral, a lot of the compositions of that album started using vocal loops,
Mm.
using as a foundation of the songs just voices. And the voices would do a number of things, but I didn't know exactly how to present this, and I started creating. I thought that it would be a solo project, solo, like me out there in the wild on a stage with all these machines going crazy, singing, recording live, recording one layer on top of another, and playing charango and some percussion, and then kind of like it was like DJing over all this and improvising, and it was amazing. It felt very empowering. I was like, yeah, I don't need
One
anybody
woman
else. I
show,
can
yeah.
exactly. This is woo. But at the same time, was very stressful because anything could go wrong, and it was just me. And also, I deeply missed the interaction with
Yeah.
musicians. I think a lot of what I've done, and in many ways, the music that I do, even though it's not very related to jazz right now, it does have that kind of communication and improvisation and interacting with other musicians. To me, is very, very important. So I was really missing that, and I started incorporating other humans into the mix. And then with JC Maillard, who's a long time collaborator, wonderful artist from the island of Guadeloupe, we had the idea of, oh, let's really work on this from a different angle, and he started helping me with the production, and we started creating sounds that didn't exist and creating instruments that didn't exist, all using new technology again, and using um, uh, digital technologies. And the result is this record that combines South American folk rhythms like huayno from the Andean region, saya, Afro-Bolivian saya, Argentine rhythms, Colombian rhythms, with experimental pop sounds and um, R&B and funk and electronic sounds and all kinds of things. So yes, it was very fun, but a very long process to figure out what are we doing with this? How is this gonna all come together? And it's just 7 songs that took forever to be finished with. But I'm very proud of it. I'm glad that we managed to put it out.
When you talk about sort of the folk influences that were on here, like Saya or different genres, talk to me a little bit about uncovering those and kind of either turning back to them or realizing that they were right for a project that was so experimental. What was kind of the connection point for you and unearthing those, but at the same time finding new ways to use them to something that, as you said, sounded like didn't exist before?
Yes, I think in terms of the rhythms, I think there is something very fascinating about traditional music that is usually the use of several percussion instruments together, how they come together, how they interlock. This has been perfected over years. There's this person that's playing, a little part on a cajita, and this other person is playing another part on a cajon, and this other person is playing another part on another instrument. And there is a very specific part that has been perfected over the years, over decades, over sometimes centuries, that develops into something that merges and locks in a very perfect way when you hear the whole ensemble. And to me, that is fascinating, and it's something that we would be missing if we don't, if we just forget about these incredible rhythms. And it makes me dance also because of that tension that creates this perfect tension and release, right? That's the beauty of music in general, but in the case of this music and these rhythms, is the perfect tension and release that makes you want to jump and move, and leave your seat.
Yeah. One thing that you and I talked a lot about were sort of other artists who are finding new ways to do this and unearthing different traditions and different ways. And we'd kind of come up with a Spotify playlist that we are going to share with everybody and we'll send after. But I did want to talk a little bit about some of these artists and just kind of what excites you about a generation of women that's finding new ways to make music like this now. I don't know if there's somebody in particular you'd want to start with, or
Yes, there are so many incredible artists out there. And again, as we were talking about at the beginning, they found a very special connection to this music and present it in new ways. One that is very exciting to me right now is Silvana Estrada. She's a Mexican artist. She's very young. She just won at least 2 Grammys very recently, and she's doing amazingly well. I'm so happy for her because she truly deserves it. And to me, this is a new voice in folk music in a way, that we will remember for years. I know that. I can tell. And she's a wonderful instrumentalist as well. She writes beautiful songs. So maybe we can, I don't know, listen to a bit of.
definitely. Yeah, Silvana's one that we're really, I mean, she just won Best New Artist at the Latin
Right,
Grammy.
Best New Artist.
She plays Venezuelan Cuatro. And again, I think you talk about Mercedes Sosa, and I think I've interviewed her before about that being a big influence of her. And there's just sort of a really special quality to her voice as well. So why don't we hear a little bit of it?
Wonderful.
Posibles, tú me las quitas todas. Tengo una risa con alas que vuela si estamos a solas. Tengo una voz y una piel que quieren que tú las descifres. Tengo la vida muy corta para entender lo que dicen tus ojos, que cuando los miro brillan igual que los míos, pero no logro.
Unfortunately, we can't play a ton more
Yeah,
because of
it's short. Yeah.
copyright restrictions. That's just so wonderful. We're gonna share this playlist with you folks, so fear not. You can listen to the whole song and many other songs of hers. But she's wonderful.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, I think of her really as being more of a straightaway example of what folk artists look like in this generation. And I think she has so many influences as well. You know, she grew up also in choirs and studying jazz and you know, playing sanjarocho. So there's
Yes.
all of these influences that kind of come, you can kind of hear them, but at the same time it does sound really rooted in what's happening today.
Yes, 100%. Um, do you want to jump to somebody else that we might be
Let's.
able to
Why don't
share
we
here?
do the great Dilo Pimienta, who is from Colombia?
Yes, you make the introduction.
Lido Pimienta is from Colombia, and I think she's been an incredible force in the music industry. I think she's found really powerful ways to combine Afro indigenous rhythms and traditions, while also incorporating these sounds that I think are really forward thinking and almost dreamlike, I think, in a way. I think she's been a really exciting artist. How did you discover her? You remember?
I actually, no, I don't remember. Maybe she started collaborating with Chanta Via Circuito with some other artists that do electronic music here in Argentina. And I think I discovered her via them, but yes, I'm not sure. I'm gonna play a bit of it, just a little bit of a
Tiny
song.
bit.
Let's see.
Pues soy mujer y llevo el dolor adentro. Soy mujer de lluvia, de sangre en luna, de tierra, sal y luna. Por amor, sin duda, si es que mañana muero, de aquí yo no me muevo. Yo no le tengo miedo, no le tengo miedo, no.
That voice.
She has an incredible voice. Both of them. Yes.
Definitely. And again, like you said, I think we can really see sort of the how, you know, maybe the approach and kind of looking backward and ahead is really similar, but they sound nothing alike. You know, we have one artist, you know, who is also, I think it also just shows how expansive sounds from Latin
100%. I think there is something to be said to the fact that, globalization also made a dent in what we're listening, because now we do have, we can tap into any music that we like, and we can listen to any music. It doesn't have to be only the music that we have in our surroundings or acoustic music that we want to see. And that changed the game for everybody. And it's fascinating to see what people come up with.
Definitely. And then we have one who is, I think, one of the most exciting artists, producers, thinkers, and that's the great Venezuelan artist Arca, who is just doing, I mean, talk about making sounds that don't sound like they exist. Arca is just bending things to her will and doing just the most unique, I think, production wise. And I think what's interesting about Attica too is that she's very pop. You know, she's worked for some of the biggest names in pop music, but at the same time, I think she lives in a space that is very futuristic and very avant-garde.
100%. Sonically, I mean, very few people are tapping into anything that gets to that level. And I discovered her when she started working with Bjork, actually, and she's an alumna of the Clive Davis Institute where I'm teaching. We did not cross paths there, but it's interesting to me that there was that experience, which makes a lot of sense because um, they do learn so much about contemporary production, um, and different, more alternative ways of producing music, and it shows. I'm gonna play a little bit of a song from her album Kick 2. Let's see.
La doña Arca se rebosa en su cama, frota su fe con desenfado. La doña Arca se rebosa en su cama, frota su fe con desenfado. La doña Arca se rebosa en su cama, frota su fe con desenfado.
Well,
I'm wondering, as a, because you produce as well, as a producer, kind of what's your take on Arca and what she's doing?
well, I think that's the, as I said, the most fascinating aspect of her music. Um, there, I mean, there are so many different elements that she's putting together. I can't even describe, but what I like also is that I think she was not necessarily thinking much about her background as a Venezuelan and or as a Latin American, and after she embraced that, I like it because I find that she's revolutionizing, things like reggaeton that you'd be like, well, okay, what are you gonna do with that? That's more on the experimental side. Boom, Arca. There you have it. So I really like that she's singing in Spanish, not all the time, but sometimes, and bringing this whole other world and chopping it, pissing it, like, putting it together in a completely different way. So it's fascinating.
I also think there's something too that I think, so often, I see artists who are women just kind of being boxed in a certain way. And I think just how limitless the possibilities become when you can kind of do whatever you want and be as experimental. And like you said, kind of explode these little worlds or molds that people are used to putting you in. And all of a sudden you have something that I think still to people, when you hear it and to listeners, sounds like very much like it's coming from this artist. It's very much them. But at the same time, it's pushing somewhere, I think, much further beyond any kind of expectation that anyone imposes on artists.
Yes, 100%. I think also that happens in, well, not only in the US, but everywhere in the world. If you say, for instance, oh, you're from Argentina, so you must probably, you do tango and you,
Here's
you know,
Argentinian rock.
it's like, well, yeah, I could, but that's not really my background. Or when I moved to New York, oh, you're a Latina. Okay, you're from Argentina, so you dance salsa, and I'm like, no idea of what that is, basically. Or you eat rice and beans, and I'm like, no, we're more a barbecue people. So like the shades, the cultural shades, and the nuance is, it's actually huge. And the assumptions sometimes, exactly want to put you somewhere that you don't feel comfortable with, or you don't feel that you belong to. So I think it's always a challenge to defy that and be like, well, yes, but no, or it's okay if I decide to rap in a song of mine. Maybe I didn't do it before, or maybe I'm not even great at it, but I feel that I need to say this in this manner, and I'm gonna do it.
Yeah. I'm curious about what's been inspiring you and kind of seeing this and how it's been playing a role in the music you're making now. Because I've her little bird told me that you're working on some projects now, and
Yes.
I'm curious kind of how this dialogue that you're seeing across all these genres and all this work that that is coming out, how that's kind of filtering into your own approach.
Well, because I've been seeing and noticing so many wonderful women that I can feel related to musically, I started putting together an album that's in collaboration with different artists that are also tapping into something that could be defined as folkloric and futuristic somehow. And I started actually in Argentina because I spent a few months here, but it will be continued in the US. And it's interesting because in any collaboration, you're always learning from the person you're collaborating with in terms of the way they think about music, the way they produce music, the way they put it out there, the way that you interpret something that to you is obvious, or so it's been really, really great, and I can't wait to continue working on this. There are many people that I have on my wish list. So let's see. We'll see how it continues, but it's really a learning curve, another learning curve. Actually, so I wanted to play something before I play something of what I'm working on right now, because I think it kind of shows the new path that I'm working on. It has to do a lot with vocal experimentation. And again, it involves loopers, and it involves layers of vocals that are chopped, cut, pieced together in a different manner. So I just wanted to play a snippet of a song that's part of Umbral, and then I'll show you something of the new stuff. Let's see.
Let's hear it.
This is a song called La Otra that is based on a poem by Gabriela Mistral, the wonderful Chilean writer. And you'll hear right at the beginning a strange vocal part that makes actually the structure of the song. And then there are Indian flutes combined with cuatro sounds and all kinds of things. But I'll just play a little bit so you get a sense.
Era la flor llameando del cactus de montaña. Era aridez y fuego, nunca se refrescaba. Piedra y cielo tenía pies y espaldas. Y no bajaba nunca a buscar ojos de agua. Donde hacía su siesta, las hierbas se enroscaban de aliento de su boca y brasas de su cara. Doblarse no sabía la planta de montaña, y al costado de ella yo me doblaba. La dejé que muriese robándole mi entraña. Anyhow, something like that. And
I love that your voice is doing something different kind of every time you hear it.
Say it again?
I love that your voice is doing something different, like every time it appears. It's almost like peeking out, and each time it's a different approach, a different trick.
Yes. Yeah, that's the idea. I find it such an interesting instrument sometimes I find it such an interesting instrument sometimes unexplored, right? It's not only, okay, you can sing lyrics, put together melody lines, but you can do so much more. And that's what I have a bit of, I put myself in a mission with that, because there are just so many textures that you can create and find fascinating things to do with. So I'm gonna try and share something that doesn't exist yet, and it's on its early stages. I started writing, producing a song called Siete Lirios. Lirios, Julyssa, what flower is that?
Lily?
Lirio. Lily, yes, sorry. I should know that. Okay, lirios. Lily, the lily flower. And I'm going to share my screen and show you basically the very early stages of the production of this song that incorporates a percussion instrument that I like very much that's called the caja. Let me play a little bit of the caja for you first, actually. So this caja is an instrument that's traditional from the north of Argentina, and it's used for women that sing in the mountains and that sing coplas. This is a tradition from Spain that was brought to the Americas, and it has a beautiful sound because it kind of runs in and echoes in spaces like that, and basically it has other sounds that, let me see if I can play just a little bit without let's see. Oops. Well, it's gonna be short-lived. Anyhow, yes, you got a sense. I've been experiencing, for some reason, right this second, a problem with Logic. This is a program that I use to write music, to produce music, and then what I did was using also quite a lot of these chopped vocals. Let me show you, in combination with a digital harp, and it sounds like this. Let me play just a little bit of it. Well, it is very short-lived, as I was saying. And with things like some kind of Nashville sounding guitar. Let's see. Because we all love Nashville, right? And my looper.
Playing Nashville.
I have never been there, but I just love it, of course. And then you can listen to a bit of the harmonies that I created with the looper. So this is using a harmonizer. I sing only one note, and my harmonizer creates a particular chord that I decide on. So that creates the harmony of the song. So let me just play a little bit. If it doesn't fail, at least you get a sense of altogether what that would be like. I'm going to play it from a bit closer here. Y cuando ya no te quiera tanto, y cuando ya no te quiera tanto, y esas flores se marchiten, recuérdame para siempre en los ecos de mi canto. Y cuando ya no te quiera tanto, y cuando ya no te quiera tanto, y esas flores se marchiten, recuérdame para siempre en los ecos de mi canto. That's the electro part where you have to dance. Anyway, just a little bit for you to get a sense.
I'm so curious, Sophia, where did it start? Where does a song like this start for you? Was there a particular place that you wrote from or started producing from or composing from?
Yes, actually, it started with a caja. I have several cajas at home. I love the sound of it. This is a rhythm that's similar to a huayno, again, something from the Andean region of South America, which is very particular because it's one of the few styles of music in South America that's shared in most countries. You will find it in the north of Argentina, in Chile, in Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, and it's beautiful, and it's I don't know, it brings you to hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And so I started playing a very simple pattern on the caja, and the song just came up thinking about a lover that's finding flowers on a vase, and thinking, oh, this is lovely. This is gonna be, well, always, of course, with my dark, approach to life, thinking, well, we will remember these beautiful flowers when our love is over, and also the song that is going to be accompanying the sound of this caja. So it's it kind of brings this tradition of coplas and the tradition of women singing coplas and singing using the caja, which usually is just accompanied by this instrument. And then I started piecing together the harmonies with the looper, the harmonies with the harmonizer, and using my voice to create the whole atmosphere and many of the things that you're hearing. And then I started working on digital instruments to create other ambient sounds, or to create this harp line that accompanies that particular line. So it starts to build up, and it's, again, this, we are ages, especially, yes, we're ages before this is done and finished and mixed and mastered and all that, but we still have so much work to do. But I just wanted to show you a little bit of the process so you get a sense of what I'm working on right now. I thought
Go
it would be
inside the skeleton, which is
yes, 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 yes.
what's your relationship? Where did your relationship with the caja start? Was it something that you kind of grew up with, or have you gotten closer to it the more you've been making music?
No, it was, interestingly enough, although I listened to folk music growing up because my mother was a big fan of folk music, I rediscovered or reconnected with South American folk music when I moved to Boston in 2001. I moved to the States because I wanted to learn more about jazz and improvisation. I heard, my first jazz album when I was 19 years old. So it was like I was already, doing so many things before that. I was very unaware of the existence of this music. And I found it fascinating. And I got really, really excited about the idea of improvising and being able to sing this repertoire. I did quite a lot from here, but then I realized I had to go to the source to really immerse myself in the culture and understanding it also, and learn from the masters of this tradition. So I did that. And in the meantime, while I get to Boston, I meet Jorge Rueder, a wonderful bass player, and a percussionist named Jorge Perez Alvela. And both of them were from Peru, and we're like, why don't we put together a little trio and start performing music, Peruvian music, Creole and Afro-Peruvian music in a format that's, kind of like different. It's just percussion and upright bass. And we started performing music by Chabuca Granda and all the great, and Sambo Cabero and many other composers from the Afro-Peruvian tradition as well. And I found there was something there that made it click. I was like, I need to learn more about this. And in New York, when I moved to New York, I started getting involved in many projects that were related to Peruvian music and also Argentine music, and discovered Colombian music and more Cuban music that I've ever knew, that I've ever heard before, moving to the US, and Brazilian music that I already had, I was acquainted with. But I really started, I was, during a week, perhaps performing in 5 different projects that were related somehow to Latin American music, and in particular South American music. And I became completely fascinated by it, started traveling, getting percussion instruments and from different parts of South America. And I have a collection at home. So I have 3 cajas and a bombo and a Colombian tambora and all kinds of percussion instruments. I find it incredible, incredibly appealing. And I'm terrible at playing most of them, but but I do have a good sense of rhythm. So I learned how to play the different styles, and started to incorporating that way this music into my own music. And New York is a very special place for that, because there is kind of like a little Latin America that doesn't exist anywhere else. I learned more about Latin America in New York than I would have if I would have stayed back home, because my neighbors are from there. The people that I'm working with in different projects are from many different Latin American countries, and everybody's willing to learn and share. And that's the beauty of being in New York, I find.
Well, that's perfect because I was going to remind everybody to please drop their questions in the Q&A portion of the chat. We have a few minutes for that. And one of the questions that has already come in was, how do you think the experience of living in New York has influenced your music and the way you approach futurism? So, yeah.
Yes, 100%. That's that. and the fact that you can, I like it because I always felt that I belonged to different scenes. I could tap into different things at the same time in New York. I could be performing with an experimental vocal project that's experimenting different techniques, vocal techniques, and doing contemporary music, working with John Zorn, obviously a huge influence, and that's all New York all over. In projects like Mikale, which is a Zorn project with 4 other women vocalists that are very also experimental in their approach, and I mean, all that somehow stays and permeates, especially what I'm working on in terms of compositions. Then all those different parts, pieces of the DNA start to populate whatever new thing I'm doing.
Yeah. We have one other question from Farah, who says, "Hi, lovely Sophia." She wants to know what kind of looper you use.
Oh, that's a good question. So I have an RC505. It's a Roland. It's a Boss looper, and it's a wonderful one because it allows you to record 5 different loops that could be different in length. So if the question comes from a musician, you would understand this, but perhaps everybody. Maybe you can make a loop that's only 1 bar long, and a second loop that's 3 bars long, and a 4th loop that's 7 bars long, or just a quarter note long. There is some relationship between the different loops, but the fact that you can make them different lengths, it kind of allows for many other possibilities in terms of the composition of a song. So it was perfect for me, and it's very intuitive. You can, do so much with it. It also allows you to reverse loops and play them backwards or apply certain effects to them as well. So I love this machine.
Yeah. Please do leave your questions in the chat. We have one from Philip Hogg. He says, "What was the first jazz album you heard?"
That's a good question. Well, I remember vividly Bobby McFerrin and Chick Corea's Play. That record blew my mind, and I did not understand what was going on. I had no idea of what was going on, but I had to listen to it so many times before I even liked it. I was like, what? What happened here? What are these people doing? But the freedom in terms of everything, in terms of what is being said, but also in terms of the instruments, because both of them incredible, it just blew my mind.
Yeah. I have one last question before we go. Is there anything on this new project or in the future that you haven't yet tapped that you're really excited about, or a place that you want to explore, or a sound that you want to kind of go further into?
That's a really good question. In a general sense, I think the different things that I've been exploring, for instance, in classical music, it had a lot to do with perfection and achieving a certain level of mastery of my instrument and a good technique and a good sound, whatever that means, a good sound. And learning also about the greats and learning from them. And then in the case of jazz, it had more to do with freedom and improvisation and being able to be more free in the moment, being able to interpret freely in the moment, and that brought me to writing music. And in the case of Latin American music, I think it was more or mainly about rhythm and the exploration of different things that had to do with rhythm and vocal sounds as well. And lately, my exploration is going more towards sound. So it's more about creating sonic landscapes that are just non-existent and that I can create with my voice, with acoustic instruments mixed with electronic instruments. But I find that my new challenge is in terms of production, being able, I always try to be independent myself from other people that had to complete my sentences musically speaking, right? So I learned theory and I learned improvisation and I learned how to write my own music and how to lead my band and how to, and right now I find that I need to explore more and learn more about production methods and production everything and engineering the sound so that I can craft the ideas that I have in my head and depending less and less on other people for those ideas to come through, basically.
Yeah. We actually do have one last question from Amanda. I thought mine was going to be the last one, but we have one more, and it's a great question. She says, "Do you feel you've applied jazz concepts to Andean folk in that piece in progress, or do you feel like the larger mix that created jazz, Brazilian, Afro-Peruvian is where you're coming from?"
Well, I don't even know how to answer that, but I'm guessing that everything somehow sneaks in. If I listen to that, I don't find a particular element that I'm like, oh, this could be coming from my jazz experience, but it is there in the way that I sing, in the way that I approach even a note, you know, in the way that maybe I play the voicing of a particular chord, even though I'm kind of recreating it or creating it with an electronic instrument. I'm thinking of, you know, sevens and nines and other things that might not be part of the equation in terms of perhaps a traditional Indian folk song. But what I'm thinking right now is I'm not trying to dissect it too much. I'm kind of letting it be, and then if I have to explain it, I will have to analyze it and figure it out. So I'm not even at that stage. Hopefully I will be, and I will be able to answer this question better than right this second.
Hopefully we'll be back here again and we can go through it once it's finished.
Yes.
Wow, what a wonderful and interesting conversation. Thank you both so much. It was so exciting, and there are a lot of inspirations. I can't wait to listen to the new project, you know, Sofia. And Julyssa, thank you so much for your passion as well and for your knowledge. And you know, the future of folklore is looking good, I would say.
Yes, it is.
And it's definitely sounding great. We want to thank you both. Thank you, everybody, for joining us and for spending this hour with us. As I said, you'll get the recording tomorrow. And I wish you all, we hope we see you again soon at another at-home session or at a show, even better. And we look forward to having you perform live, Sofia. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the evening.
Thank you, Gabby, and thank you,
Bye,
Julyssa. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Sophia. I'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao.